Watch this.
Since Colorado's Supreme Court kicked Donald Trump off their Republican primary ballot, people have wondered if that could happen here. It won't, but would you believe there was an attempt? Idaho's GOP has something to say about yesterday's Centennial State ruling, using this moment to call out something being considered in the Gem State. But are the two connected?
For him to kind of know what we're going through and then to be able to relate that, just with a gesture like giving us cookies,
Some gifts mean more than others. Sometimes, something like a cookie and a conversation can go a long way this time of year with some of Idaho's maximum security inmates. Well, a bold and controversial ruling in Colorado is generating questions across the country. Should Donald Trump be allowed to be on the 2024 presidential ballot? Colorado Supreme Court said no to that question when it comes to their state primary, citing a section of the U.S. Constitution, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. Justices overturned a lower court ruling which said Trump participated in the January 6th insurrection, but could not be barred from the ballot. So now he is, at least for the time being. So what would a ruling like this mean for his part in Idaho politics, or for the rest of the country for that matter? Joe Paris spoke with a Boise State politics professor to find out.
A major move in Colorado. The state Supreme Court there ruled that former President Donald Trump is disqualified from the 2024 presidential ballot for his actions as a part of the January 6th insurrection. Experts across the country agree. The ruling will certainly be appealed to the highest court.
What constitutional scholars think is likely to happen is that the Supreme Court is going to have to weigh in one way or another on this. Otherwise, you're going to have sort of a mishmash of different states adjudicating different disputes.
Dr. Charlie Hunt is a politics expert at Boise State, researching Congress and the presidency. He agrees this is a major move, but questions where it'll go.
I'm dubious about whether or not, number one, the Supreme Court is going to go along with this, and number two, whether this could really happen in a bunch of other states in such a way that's going to have a major impact on the election.
Colorado is not the first state to take on the legal question about Donald Trump. Idaho actually had a similar case filed in September by a Republican presidential candidate named John Castro. Mr. Castro filed suits in a collection of states trying to get Trump removed from the ballot. The Idaho case, though, was dismissed by Castro back on October 3rd, before any real action could go on with the case. We reached out to Castro for his reason why, but no response right away. Likely related, though, to Idaho moving to a presidential caucus. The Colorado decision, though, may open the door for more suits.
Certainly in all 50 states, no matter how red or how blue, you're going to have folks on either side sort of ready to pounce on potential opportunities like this.
Dr. Hunt touches on a major hypothetical. Will solid conservative states like Idaho try to send a message by attempting to remove Joe Biden from ballots, similar to the impeachment action in recent years?
Donald Trump was impeached twice for two different kinds of offenses. And, Joe Biden is under this impeachment inquiry now in the House of Representatives for a very different set of alleged offenses. And the concern then becomes, well, just every president's going to get impeached by the opposing party. And this is just a new tool in the toolbox.
This positions the United States Supreme Court to weigh in on a heavily political question. That is something that Dr. Hunt explains they're wary to do.
The court doesn't want to be seen as just another political body like Congress or like the presidency. In order for them to have power and have legitimacy, they need to kind of be above that. And so they don't generally like weighing in on stuff like this. And so that's part of why I'm skeptical that they're going to come down with some monumental ruling, right, that Trump can't be on the ballot in any state and is disqualified as president.
So how does this all impact Idaho?
I think probably not a ton of impact on Idaho for now, but in terms of being kind of the starting gun for this legal decision that is probably going to come from the Supreme Court in the coming weeks, it will have some bearing in terms of whether or not other folks can pursue a similar route of disqualifying President Trump here in Idaho or in other states.
So in Colorado, their decision is stayed or paused until January 4th, so a few weeks, because the state of Colorado, they print their ballots coming up on the 5th of January. So this is going to be a moving target to kind of track, Brian. The Supreme Court may be forced to rule on it. It is interesting to note that with the 2020 election fraud claims, basically Supreme Court said, here, take it back. The states need to figure this out, like what we saw in Arizona, what we saw in Florida. So it'll be interesting that they tried to stay out of that. They didn't want to decide the election. This one, though, they may be forced to weigh in.
Oh, yeah, and whatever they decide, I mean, they're going to get it from both sides. Either they're in the bag with the former President Trump, or they're opposed to him being anywhere near that office. So.
It is also interesting in Colorado that you have a 5-4 decision, and I know that it's being characterized as all the liberal judges. Well, all the judges on the Colorado Supreme Court were put there by Democrats, but it is still a 5-4 split decision. So kind of gives an insight into how closely debated this issue is going to be across the country.
All right, well, sticking with Idaho, Donald Trump was the first to file to be part of Idaho's Republican process to pick a presidential candidate, which will be a caucus. It's a list he will likely remain on, but as you can imagine, Idaho's grand old party had some grandstanding to do. After yesterday's ruling, Chairman Dorothy Moon putting out a statement this morning calling the decision by Colorado Supreme Court an unprecedented and alarming scenario in our nation, a leftist move, she wrote, that directly interferes in the electoral process and exposes potentially deep flaws in party nominations being administered by the state. But that wasn't all, Chair Moon wrote, using this moment to call attention to a partisan shift in Colorado politics and how that is where Idaho is headed if a certain initiative is allowed to go forward. Not too long ago, Colorado resembled Idaho in its conservative majority, she said, but in less than a generation, it has shifted towards resembling California and other blue states. Colorado has fallen to the left since the introduction of ranked choice voting in the state. And aside from the buzzword California, it was that last sentence that caught our eye. Because as you know, there is a petition being circulated in Idaho that would open up primary elections and allow for ranked choice voting to decide who wins in a primary, with the top 4, regardless of affiliation, advancing to the November general election. And Idaho's Republican Party leadership, well, they've been strongly opposed to it, saying it's too confusing for voters and it takes away their ability to elect conservative lawmakers. But to say Colorado has, quote, fallen to the left since the introduction of ranked choice voting in the state might be a bit of a stretch. Colorado doesn't use ranked choice voting statewide. 2 years ago, the Centennial State did make it easier for cities to use it should they choose, and some cities have been using it for a few years prior. But you know how many? 5. That'd be Basalt, Boulder, Broomfield, Carbondale, and Telluride. And according to the Colorado Sun and Colorado Public Radio, Basalt, with a population of about 4,000 people, has had the option to use ranked choice voting for several years, but only used it once in 2020 for a 3-way mayoral race. Telluride, population about 2,600. They used it first in 2011. Carbondale has 6,500 people. They adopted ranked choice voting in 2002, but they have yet to use it in an election. Boulder and Broomfield, that'd be the 2 largest cities on this list. They've only adopted that option within the last 3 years, and both have only used it once, and that was last month. So what you're saying is Colorado has shifted to the left because some small mountain towns have occasionally used ranked choice voting, and some bigger cities have used it for one election cycle? Is Idaho's GOP trying to stretch a thin thread between Colorado and ranked choice voting and a Republican presidential candidate not being allowed on the ballot? Well, those are questions I asked Chairwoman Moon and got some clarification on this. She wrote back, her statement does not say ranked choice voting is the cause for Trump being taken off the ballot, but she said Colorado used to be a conservative red state, like Idaho, but recently it's become a liberal blue state with a liberal Supreme Court, which has led to the current predicament. Ranked choice voting is just one element of that shift from conservative to liberal, she wrote back. But when I reiterated, well, ranked choice voting has only been a thing recently in a handful of cities, and that 7 of the last 10 governors in Colorado have been Democratic, dating back to the 1950s, how can this shift be a recent one? Well, my email went unanswered, as did our standing request for an on-camera interview. Well, at the end of our coverage yesterday of the Catholic Church allowing same-sex couples to be blessed by a priest, we mentioned we had yet to hear back from the Boise Diocese to hear what they had to say about the shift in the recognition of the LGBTQ plus community. I wondered at the end of our segment yesterday if the diocese saying nothing yesterday was kind of their way of saying something. Well, today they said something, sort of. They issued a statement this morning saying Catholics should be on guard against misleading headlines from the media in such cases where that media says the Vatican changed doctrine or condoned same-sex unions. Well, we didn't say such things. We reported it as the doctrine or the order was issued. A blessing from a priest, a pastoral approach to being available to people who want God in their lives. That's all this is. For further understanding, the diocese says, they want you to read the 5,000-word declaration from Monday and its predecessor from 2021, where it begins with the question, does the church have the power to give blessings to unions of persons of the same sex? And their response is negative, which I believe would be contrary to what was issued this week. All right, we got a Chad Daybell update for you. Maybe some fishing, flying for a holiday maybe, and also some holiday cheer. Here's the 411.
The death penalty is still on the table for Chad Daybell, the man charged with the deaths of his wife Lori Vallow Daybell's kids, J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan, and his late wife Tammy Daybell. Court documents show Daybell's attorneys asked the court to take the death penalty off the table because Vallow's was taken off the table and because of relative culpability. The judge denied the motion. His Ada County trial is set to begin in April. You can now hunt, fish, and trap on the Snake River upstream of Broken Bridge to Pillar Falls. Fish and Game ended the closure because of the quagga mussel treatment on Monday. If you're traveling for the holidays, no surprise, you're not alone. 14 million people are expected to hit the roads this holiday stretch and 2.5 million moving through TSA each day. The Boise airport says get to the airport 2 hours before your flight takes off and try to get dropped off because parking is limited. If you do drive, budget 15 to 30 minutes for the shuttle from the economy parking lot. And please, know what you can and cannot pack in your carry-ons. You don't want to be that person. Speaking of holidays, happening tonight at 6 p.m. is the Idaho Peace Officers Memorial Wreath Ceremony. Head to the memorial on Stratford Drive in Meridian to honor families of Idaho's fallen officers. After the ceremony, stick around for cookies, hot chocolates, and memories. And that's the 411 on the 208. I'm Joe Paris.
For a man who sees the inside of a cell 23 hours a day, a friendly face and a frosted cookie, what can make their holiday? That's what some volunteers did today at the Idaho Maximum Security Prison. But how much could it mean to some mean-looking men? You'd be surprised. All right, it's that time of the show where we want to know what you think about the show. Text us at 208-321-5614. Always include your name in the hashtag #the208. That way, we know it's for us. And that way, we can share it at the end of the show. On a hill in the desert just south of Boise, 6,000 people live in solitude. They're inmates, and for the maximum security block, they hardly get a chance to leave their cell at all, which is why a visitor is often the highlight of their day. But today, it was what those visitors brought with them. A collection of church leaders and volunteers continued a 25-year-old tradition by dropping off the cookies to these inmates. And we're going to get to that story in just a second after we kind of fix some technology issues. But until then, let's get on over to Rachel over the Weather Center to find out what we can expect for your weather tonight and into the weekend.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian. Yeah, and don't adjust your set. We are not having technology issues. This is actually a live look from Skycam 7 at that dense fog that has redeveloped in the last hour or so. We briefly saw some sunshine over Boise. This is the situation out there. This is the connector. You cannot even see the overpass here that we normally see in this view. Temperatures have been hovering in the upper 30s in Boise for the last several hours. We did jump up to 42. That will be our official high today as we saw that sunshine break through very briefly. Look as you got east of Boise, though, where the fog wasn't as prevalent. We hit 51 in Mountain Home, 1 degree shy of a record in Twin Falls. It was very mild in the Magic Valley, 51 in Twin Falls today, in the 40s up in the mountains. So let's talk about that fog and where it has persisted. Out towards Caldwell and Ontario and Nampa, visibility has barely climbed above a mile all day long. A very foggy wrap up to the fall season. Today is our final day of fall, down to less than a mile now in Boise. Again, improving as you head east and north, but still we have a dense fog advisory in effect from now through at least 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. And again, it could hang on a little longer in some spots as we have high pressure that is building back in. That is allowing that temperature inversion, those stagnant conditions, to re-strengthen again. So at least through most of the day Friday, this will be the culprit behind our weather and those low-lying clouds. I do think we'll see a little more sunshine tomorrow than we saw today, but we'll have to just see what happens as our Thursday develops. By the way, winter begins tomorrow at 8:27 in the evening. So the low pressure system that pumped the moisture our way yesterday and is the culprit behind the fog we're seeing now has dived to the south, bringing heavy rain to Southern California. Los Angeles has the possibility of seeing 3 inches or more of rainfall over the next couple of days. So a dicey situation setting up there. We will be dry through most of the day, Thursday and Friday. This system is what we're watching. It'll drive a cold front through overnight Friday into Saturday. I know everyone's watching this 4-letter S word right here, right? It will bring snow as low as valley floors Saturday morning, but generally across the Treasure and Magic Valleys, a coating to maybe half an inch, and I don't think it will hang on long enough to give us a white Christmas, unfortunately. But up in the mountains, we'll see anywhere from 2 to 4, maybe 5 inches of snow above that 5,000 to 6,000 foot mark. So some fresh powder for you skiers and boarders heading into the Christmas holiday. All right, a brisk wind will come along with that cold front and colder temperatures. So by Christmas Eve into Christmas Day, morning lows in the 20s, highs only in the 30s. Pretty seasonable for the Christmas holiday, but lots of sunshine coming our way. So travel should be pretty easy if you're heading out and about for Christmas.
We already mentioned the maximum security prison south of Boise in the desert, already an isolated location. So you can imagine how isolating it can be for inmates who only see the outside of their cell for just 1 hour out of every day. You can also imagine what it would be like for that inmate to get a visitor to their cell. Today, though, a collection of church leaders and volunteers continued a 25-year-old tradition by dropping off cookies to those inmates. But as Andrew Bartline learned, the cookies, they're just part of a larger message.
The inmates in Idaho's maximum security prison spend 23 hours a day, every day, locked in a cell, seemingly little to look forward.
Especially in a place like this.
But there's a countdown to this day.
We all like cookies, right?
Cookies?
Merry Christmas, brother. God bless.
Christmas cookies.
Merry Christmas. God bless you.
Dave Browning's a familiar face, dealing out more than a decade of weekly visits.
Merry Christmas. Coming in as chaplain was probably the best thing because I got to talk to everybody.
At least to those
Hey, Merry Christmas. God bless you.
Hey, I really appreciate you guys.
who want to talk back.
So I appreciate you.
No, it's good stuff. Merry Christmas.
You have a good one.
Mark Rennick's not known to be shy.
Merry Christmas, sir, okay?
He accepted the olive branch decades ago.
That's how I met Mark, yep.
Through the Christmas cookie cart.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Between a locked door.
I robbed a dry cleaners. It's who I take my clothes to now.
Mark got 20 years, with 7 fixed.
I was just drunk and,
He's sober now and released 13 years ago. But he still remembers it's not even about the cookies.
Merry Christmas.
It's about what the cookies said.
It's knowing that somebody really cares out, that remembers who you are and that you're out here. You know, us men don't share our emotions that well. We kind of hide it, put on a tough guy kind of scenario. But in truth, this is a pretty powerful thing to do for people.
Merry Christmas.
It's a powerful message to send.
In one of the bags, there was a little note, and it said, it was from a kid written in Crayola, and it said, Jesus loves you.
Do you believe that?
I do. Can't forget that, you know?
There's a past in these walls they'd all like to forget.
I ended up with a murder case, so.
A past they can't change.
You know, just negativity and getting into that lifestyle, and you could lose your life quick, you know?
But their future, that's in their control.
Merry Christmas.
It's maybe just a cookie away.
I wanted to help him, so that's what we did.
Dave hired Mark after his release.
No, in retrospect, it was huge. It was nice of him to take me on.
Prisons are often equated to nothing more than a punishment.
You aren't going to believe it, but it was a blessing for me. My life needed to be changed.
Merry Christmas.
But reformation,
God bless you.
that takes compassion
Yeah.
and a pinch of humility.
Tatted up teddy bear.
Merry Christmas.
Here,
Happy holidays and God bless.
the proof is in the cookies.
Well, they're all residents that are going to return to the community. And people like this guy have to hire people like me and make that transition. So it's
Merry Christmas.
it's very powerful.
Merry Christmas.
Mark now works for St. Vincent de Paul. They're a large part in organizing this annual event. He now helps people re-enter society after their release, so sort of paying it forward. That would include clothes, food, a bus pass can also be part of that, along with other assistance. In total, Brian, Mark says they bought 145,000 cookies. Wow. I'm not a big math guy. You divide that by 6,000. It's about 2 dozen each, so not too bad.
That's what I was asking. They give them to every single inmate, all 6,000 of them.
Yeah. They do. So a lot of cookies, a lot of volunteers, and they kind of go in one by one and separate out by groups. And it's kind of interesting seeing some of those conversations where sometimes people want to stop and talk for a minute. Others don't really want to talk at all. But everybody kind of takes it differently.
What did you take from that today? Your first trip to the maximum security prison?
That was tough, man. This tough. 23 hours a day in there. Yeah. It was a lot of people are looking out of. That's the window. And they're looking at people, and there's something to see, some sort of stimulant, right? It seemed to be the highlight of their day to see a face and to get to talk to somebody. I imagine it's a tough situation.
Yeah, this time of year, any time of year, but this time of year it's nice to not just feel isolated and not to feel forgotten. All right, Thanks, Andrew. All right, a couple of comments on this Wednesday. Let's get to them right now. This Shannon from Boise asks, does this mean the Colorado Supreme Court now gets to decide who the public can vote for? Sounds unconstitutional to me. Not necessarily. They're saying who qualifies to be on a ballot, just like being 35, being naturally born citizen, that kind of stuff. Anyone who participates in an insurrection, not qualified according to the Supreme Court. Colorado. I stopped paying attention to Dorothy Moon when she falsely claimed Idaho elementary students were being taught CRT. I don't know which planet she's on, but it's not planet Earth, says David in Boise. We talked about that a couple of years ago, actually. Love the show, Brian, but I have to stop watching it. You're reporting too many stories featuring narrow-minded bigots from the country's leaders to the church. Can't everyone mind their own business? That's Beckett in Twin Falls. Hopefully you stuck around to watch Andrew's story, and that kind of lifted your spirits and give you an idea that we hope to do a lot more than that, and we do. And we'll do it again tomorrow.